Welcome back to Real Talk English, everyone. It's Emily here, and I'm so glad you've joined us for another deeply reflective and hopefully empowering conversation today.
And I'm Paul, ready to dive into some truly meaningful territory with all of you. Emily, I'm particularly excited about our topic today because it touches on something so fundamental to how we grow, how we evolve, and how we truly live.
Absolutely, Paul. Today, we're going to explore this powerful idea that personal growth isn't some grand, monumental leap we make when all the stars align perfectly. Instead, it's this beautiful, steady accumulation of small, consistent actions. It's about planting tiny seeds every single day, rather than waiting for the perfect weather to plant an entire garden overnight.
That's such a vivid analogy, Emily, and it perfectly encapsulates the essence of what we want to discuss. So often, we get caught in this trap, don't we? This mental loop of thinking, I'll start when I have more time, or I'll begin when I feel more motivated, or I'll tackle that goal once everything else is settled. We create these elaborate mental prerequisites for ourselves, inadvertently building walls around our own potential.
It's a classic case of waiting for the ideal circumstances, isn't it? We envision this perfect, pristine starting line, a clear schedule, abundant energy, zero distractions, perhaps even a full moon and a gentle breeze. And because life rarely, if ever, provides such a flawless setup, we end up just waiting. We wait, and then sometimes years pass, and we're still at the same starting line, just feeling a little more frustrated with ourselves.
Precisely. And that waiting, that inertia, it's not just a benign delay. It becomes a heavy, almost physical weight that holds us back. It saps our motivation, diminishes our confidence, and whispers doubts into our ears. See, you can't even start. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of inaction. We convince ourselves that the magnitude of the goal requires an equally magnificent, flawless beginning, when in reality, the biggest goals are broken down into the smallest, most manageable fragments.
That's so true. I've definitely fallen into that trap myself. I remember wanting to learn to play the ukulele, and I kept telling myself, I need to clear my weekend to dedicate a solid block of time to it. Or, I need to buy the perfect beginner's book and watch all the YouTube tutorials first. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and my beautiful ukulele just sat there, gathering dust in its case. It was a perfect example of how waiting for the ideal became an excuse for never.
That's a relatable story, Emily, and it highlights the insidious nature of this ideal circumstance myth. It feels responsible, doesn't it? Like we're being thorough, preparing properly. But beneath that veneer of preparation, it's often a subtle form of resistance, a fear of the unknown, or even a fear of failure. If we don't start, we can't fail, but we also can't grow. The real growth happens in the messy, imperfect act of starting, not in the pristine fantasy of the perfect launch.
So, how do we begin to dismantle this myth, Paul? How do we recognize when we're falling into the waiting game? And more importantly, how do we push past that inertia and actually initiate something, even if it feels incredibly small or insignificant at first?
It starts with a shift in perspective, Emily. We have to actively challenge the notion that big results require big beginnings. Consider a gardener, for instance. They don't wait for a perfectly manicured plot, ideal soil conditions, and a guaranteed sunny forecast for the entire growing season before they even think about planting a seed. A true gardener understands that growth is a process, often messy, often unpredictable. They plant the seed even if the soil isn't perfect, even if the forecast is uncertain, and then they tend to it, day after day, with small, consistent actions. A little water, a little weeding, a little sunlight. It's the consistency of those small actions that brings about the transformation, not the initial, grand, perfect planting.
That's a wonderful analogy. It grounds the concept in something tangible and natural. So, for us, as individuals seeking personal growth, it means identifying those tiny seeds we can plant. But what about the psychological barrier, the sheer overwhelming feeling of a big goal? How do we overcome that initial mental drag?
That's where the concept of microactions becomes our superpower. When a goal feels overwhelming, whether it's writing a book, learning a new language, getting healthier, or even organizing your home, our brain tends to freeze. It sees the mountain and says, nope, too big, too much effort. The trick is to make the first step, and indeed many subsequent steps, so ridiculously small that your brain can't possibly argue with it. It's about lowering the barrier to entry to almost zero.
So, what does a ridiculously small action even look like in practice? Give us some tangible examples, Paul, because I think a lot of our listeners, myself included, might still be thinking small means 30 minutes, when maybe it needs to be even smaller.
You hit the nail on the head, Emily. Small is often still too big for our procrastinating minds. For instance, if your goal is to write a book, a small action isn't writing a chapter. It's not even writing a page. It could be opening the document, just opening the document, or writing one sentence. Literally, one sentence. If your goal is to get fitter, it's not going to the gym for an hour. It could be doing one push-up, or walking to the mailbox and back. Just one tiny, almost laughable action. The beauty is, once you've done that one push-up or written that one sentence, the inertia is broken. You've created a tiny bit of momentum, and often you'll find yourself doing a little more. But the commitment is only to that one tiny thing.
I love that. It's like tricking your brain into starting. You're not asking it to climb Mount Everest. You're just asking it to take one step onto the first pebble. And the first pebble is never that scary.
Exactly. Think of it as a tiny, almost imperceptible nudge. I remember a few years ago, I wanted to learn some basic coding. The idea of learning a whole new language, understanding algorithms, it felt like an insurmountable task. I kept putting it off, saying I needed a dedicated online course, a block of free evenings, and a fresh mind. Of course, none of those perfect conditions materialized. Then I heard about this micro-action concept again, and I thought, okay, what's the absolute smallest thing I can do? My goal became open a coding tutorial website and read the first paragraph. That was it. No pressure to understand, no pressure to practice, just read one paragraph.
And what happened? Did you just read one paragraph and close the tab?
Well, sometimes yes. On busy days, I genuinely just read that one paragraph and then moved on. But often, once I was there, once the tab was open and my brain was engaged for those 30 seconds, I'd find myself reading a second paragraph. Then maybe trying the first example. Some days it turned into 5 minutes, some days 10. The key wasn't the duration of the session, but the unbroken chain of showing up. I built a habit of engaging with it daily, even if it was for the briefest moment. And over time, those tiny moments compounded into actual progress. I'm certainly not a programmer now, but I can understand basic scripts and even troubleshoot minor issues, which felt impossible just a few years ago.
That's a brilliant personal example, Paul. It really illustrates how the consistency, not the intensity, is the game changer. It's about building a rhythm, a tiny ritual that tells your brain, we do this now. So, for our listeners, how do they identify their micro-action? How do they choose that one tiny, almost silly step?
The best micro-action is the one you absolutely cannot say no to. It's the one that feels almost too easy. If you want to declutter your home, it's not organize the garage. It's put away one item that's out of place. Just one. If you want to start a meditation practice, it's not meditate for 20 minutes. It's sit quietly for 60 seconds. The point is to remove all friction. Make it so simple that the act of not doing it requires more mental effort than just doing it.
I can see how that would chip away at the inertia. It's like a tiny snowball rolling down a hill, gathering more snow and momentum as it goes. But what happens when the hill gets steeper, when the initial excitement wears off, or when life throws a curveball and even that one tiny action feels like too much? This leads us perfectly into our third theme, embracing the imperfect journey and sustaining momentum.
The inevitable ebb and flow of any long-term endeavor. This is where the concept of progress over perfection truly comes into play. We often have this idealized image of what consistency looks like: a perfect streak, never missing a day, always performing at our peak. But life isn't a straight line, and personal growth certainly isn't. There will be days when you miss your micro-action, days when you feel utterly unmotivated, or days when external circumstances simply make it impossible.
And that's usually when the inner critic swoops in, isn't it? See? You failed. What's the point? Just give up. It can be so demotivating, often leading people to abandon their goals entirely because they broke their perfect streak.
Exactly. That inner critic thrives on perfectionism. It tells us that one missed day invalidates all the days we showed up. But that's a destructive narrative. The truth is, consistency isn't about never missing a step. It's about getting back on track after you miss one. It's about acknowledging the setback without letting it derail your entire journey. Think of it like a journey on foot. You might stumble, you might even fall. But the goal isn't to never stumble. The goal is to get back up and keep walking.
So how do we cultivate that resilience? How do we silence that inner critic when we inevitably have an off day, or even a whole off week?
It requires a conscious act of self-compassion and a redefinition of what success means on a daily basis. Instead of viewing a missed day as a failure, view it as a data point. What happened? Why did I miss it? Was it exhaustion? Was it poor planning? Was it simply a choice to prioritize something else? There's no judgment, just observation. And then, the most crucial part, the next day, or as soon as possible, you return to your micro-action. You don't wait for another ideal Monday. You just start again, right where you are, with that same tiny, non-negotiable step.
That's a powerful shift. It's about being kind to yourself while still holding yourself accountable to the overall direction. I remember a project I was working on last year, a really ambitious creative endeavor. I set myself the goal of dedicating an hour to it every evening. For the first few weeks, I was on fire. An hour, sometimes more, every single night. Then, life happened. A family emergency, a surge in work commitments, and suddenly my hour became 10 minutes. Then 5. Then nothing for a few days. I felt this crushing guilt, like I'd ruined everything.
And what did you do? Did you throw in the towel?
I was tempted to. The voice in my head was screaming, "You're not disciplined enough. You're a failure." But then I remembered a podcast I'd listened to. Funny enough, it was on this very topic. And the host talked about re-entry. Just re-enter the process, however small. So, after a week of feeling terrible, I told myself, "Okay, Emily, tonight you just open the file. No pressure to write, just open it." And I did. And just like your coding story, Paul, once the file was open, a few words came, then a paragraph, and slowly I found my rhythm again. It wasn't an hour, but it was something. And that something made all the difference.
That's such a perfect illustration, Emily. Your story highlights that the real victory isn't in avoiding the stumble, but in the decision to get back up. It builds a different kind of resilience, one that's far more robust than a fragile streak of perfection. It teaches you that you are capable of adapting, of forgiving yourself, and of continuing even when things aren't ideal. And that in itself is profound personal growth. It changes your relationship with yourself and with your goals.
It truly does. It transforms the journey from a rigid pass-fail test into a more fluid, evolving process. And I think that's where the deeper personal transformation really happens, isn't it? It's not just about achieving the specific goal, but about who you become in the consistent act of pursuing it.
Absolutely. The goals themselves are often just a vehicle for self-discovery. When you commit to showing up day after day in tiny, consistent ways, you're not just moving closer to a specific outcome. You're building self-trust. You're demonstrating to yourself through action that you are capable, that you are resilient, that you are worthy of your own efforts. Each small step, each micro action is a vote of confidence in yourself. And those votes accumulate.
That's a beautiful way to put it. A vote of confidence. Because when we only take action when conditions are perfect, we're essentially saying, I can only achieve this if everything is easy and goes my way. But when we push through the messiness, when we initiate those small actions despite the imperfections, we're saying, I am capable, regardless of the external circumstances. I can create my own momentum.
And that's a fundamentally empowering shift. It takes the power away from external factors, the perfect timing, the perfect mood, the perfect resources, and places it firmly within your own hands. It cultivates an internal locus of control. You realize that you don't need permission from the universe to start. You just need to grant yourself permission to take that tiny, almost insignificant first step, and then the next, and the next.
It also shifts our definition of progress. We're not waiting for the grand finale to feel accomplished. Every single micro-action, every single consistent effort becomes a small victory in itself. It's like watching a plant grow. You don't wait for the tree to be fully mature to appreciate its growth. You notice the tiny new leaf, the slightly taller stem, the bud forming. Each of those small changes is progress.
Precisely. And celebrating those small victories is crucial for sustaining momentum. It's not about waiting for the finish line to pop the champagne. It's about acknowledging the effort, the consistency, the decision to show up, even on those challenging days. A simple mental, well done, I did my one push-up today, can be incredibly powerful in reinforcing the habit and boosting your self-efficacy. It's how we build a positive feedback loop, rather than waiting for external validation or a huge outcome.
That makes so much sense. It's about appreciating the journey itself, not just the destination. And in doing so, the destination often becomes richer and more meaningful because of the person you've become along the way. Paul, this conversation has been incredibly insightful and truly empowering. I feel a renewed sense of motivation to tackle some of my own lingering goals with this micro-action mindset.
Me too, Emily. It's a constant recalibration for all of us. The tendency to wait for ideal circumstances is deeply ingrained. But the antidote is surprisingly simple. Just start small and start now. Don't underestimate the cumulative power of those tiny, consistent efforts. They're the bedrock of true, lasting personal transformation.
So, to all our listeners out there on Real Talk English, we want to challenge you. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the new year. Don't wait for perfection. Think about one goal you've been putting off. Now, identify the absolute smallest, most ridiculously easy action you could take towards it today. Just one. And then, do it.
That's right. Whether it's reading one paragraph of that book, doing one stretch, sending one email, or simply thinking one positive thought about your goal, just take that first tiny step. Break the inertia. Trust that the consistent repetition of that small action will lead to extraordinary results over time. Your future self will thank you for starting today, imperfectly, but consistently.
Thank you so much for joining us on Real Talk English today. We hope this conversation has inspired you to embrace the power of small, consistent actions in your own life. Remember, growth isn't about grand gestures. It's about persistent, gentle nudges forward.
Keep those small steps going, and we'll be here next time on Real Talk English to explore more ideas that help you grow, learn, and connect. Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.